Hello, guys. What's up, everybody? This is the one and only African superstar back at it again. What's up to the family? Yes, 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 yes. I'm here with an unpopular opinions. I received quite a lengthy comment on one of my recent videos, which basically said, in effect, I make moving abroad look easy. Everybody's situation is different. Some people have family that relies on them and they can't just get up and blah, 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 blah. And, I don't go back and forth in the comments. You guys know I don't go back and forth in the comments. I decided, hey, you know what? Let me talk about this via a video response because I want to make it very clear. I've never actually said moving abroad is easy. I've literally never said that. But I want to elaborate and do that here. So that's going to be tonight's topic. In popular opinions, no, moving abroad is not easy. Big shout out to the African superstar family. As always, live streams require interaction from you. We can't kick off the topic until someone gets in the chat room. So when you come in the room, like the stream, get in the chat room, greet me, or you can let us know where you're watching us from, etc., etc., etc. But I'm waiting for you in the chat room. Hello, big shout out to the family. How is everybody doing today? I've been coming a lot often this week. So I hope that you guys are pleased by that. What's up, Marie? Thank you so much. Marie is the first one in the chat room, so I can go ahead and kick off the topic. Today's topic, again, unpopular opinions. No, moving abroad is not easy. Although, disclaimer, I want to say it's probably more easier today than ever before because of all the resources through social media that have previously not been there. Previously, people moving abroad have kind of had a lot of structure around their move. Oh, thanks, baby. Thank you so much for the first super chat, kicking it off. I see you, babes. Thank you so much. Yeah, let me get that up there on the screen. Hold on. Hey, what's going on? Hold on, hold on, hold on. Let me get that up on the screen. I want to get that on the screen. Hey, why is it not letting me do that? Technical difficulties. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Oh man. Okay. It's not letting me put that on the screen. I don't know why, but um anyway, back to this topic. So I want to say that I think moving abroad now with all the social media resources, it's the easiest it's ever been in getting that information because I know, for instance, when I was just interested in traveling to Africa back in 2014, 2015, I was searching online and could not find a lot of information about it. Now, 10 years later, there's a wealth of information on YouTube. There's a lot of people living digital nomad lifestyles and all these kind of things. So I want to state that before I get into what I'm about to say. Now, first and foremost, I think I have been very, very consistent on who my channel applies to and what that means. I talk to people that are in situations that will allow them um to have information and to have motivation to make these moves. It's not easy. It's actually thinking outside the box, and it requires a lot of tenacity. It requires a lot of diligence. It requires financing to make it happen. Period, point blank. you know because it's not common. It really has, it historically has not been common for Westerners to move to the international community without military, without spouse, without maybe school or study abroad. Typically Westerners have moved for these specific reasons. And yes, there have always been anomalies, people outside the box that just move and settle. There have been artists and musicians that have gone to Europe and gone through Asia and all that. But the big mainstream movement of a lot of Western people moving and settling in third world countries or moving abroad, this is all modern. This is all real time. And no, it's not easy. But I think the point of my last videos was, if you really want to make it happen, you will make it happen. I recognize I'm a single woman with no children. I get it. However, I do still have family. I have a mother, I have a sister. They live in America. I have lots of friends. It's the place I grew up in. It's the place I went to university with. To just say, I don't have connections or ties to Ohio, or it's ludicrous. But at the end of the day, I had to prioritize, what Gina wants and what Gina needs over the others. Now, if you're having school age children, obviously, yeah, you kind of need to look after them and their needs and make the decisions of what environment is the best for them. If you're dealing with a spouse who's not ready to make those moves, that's up to you. I personally have prioritized myself pretty much above everybody in and around my life. My endeavors, my wishes and desires are first and foremost. And there's a specific reason I operate like that. The reason I operate like that is because time is limited. The other reason I operate like that is because I've asked myself the question, and I'm always constantly evaluating, if the shoe was on the other foot, would this individual sacrifice on my behalf? Would this individual put their dreams on the back burner to put me first? And in many cases, most cases, majority cases, with the exception of like my mom and probably my sister, those people probably would sacrifice for me, and they have sacrificed for me in the past. Virtually like every person I've ever been with romantically, they would prioritize themselves over me. Even my ex-husband would do that. And so therefore, I have also learned to prioritize myself over the needs of others, in many regards. Now, there's a lot of gray area, for people. Everybody's situation is unique. If you find yourself in a unique situation, you don't need to take any offense to my messages here. I'm not directing them at you, and I'm not, looking down on you, and I'm not, encouraging you to abandon your responsibilities. But I'm more or less promoting those that are in a position and those that desire, and not just surfacely shallow desire, but deeply desire an alternative option. Those people is who I'm trying to motivate to go. If you are on the fence and you're in a position that you can manage it, or you're willing to create, some type of infrastructure, because yeah, for me, I could pick up and move. I was able to pick up and move and not really look back. For other people, they will probably need to be going back and forth. You know what I mean? Or for others, they may have to migrate with the family. For instance, if you have young children and you decide that you and your spouse want to move, which again, there are countless examples of that here on YouTube, of families that have indeed moved with their children. And they're putting out the content of schools and healthcare and, immigration and how to make all those things work. I think based on your situation, a particular person's situation, ideally you want to connect with people that have information relative to you. Now, yeah, I'm single. I don't have any kids. So when it comes to moving as a family unit, I can't advise you on that. I can't refer you to people that are doing it and people that have done it. But me specifically, I can't speak from that perspective, and I don't. Do I need to be penalized because I'm not in that situation? No. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. And I also think I have been obviously advising diasporians to work out your finances. If for instance, you have aging parents that live abroad, and maybe I have a friend of mine in Ghana who, she's the only child, for her parents, and her parents are getting elderly. And, in that situation, you need to make sure you have reserves. You need to have an emergency fund if you need to travel last minute or something like that to get home to look after your family members. Basically, You have to analyze your specific situation, okay, and create the infrastructure around that to make your move happen or make your dreams happen. That's just part of the game in anything. You know what I mean? It's just like starting a business. It's just like having kids or starting a family. You know, everybody's start line is at a different position, and you have to kind of make it convenient for yourself of how to achieve these things. And so I don't ever want anybody to watch me and get the impression that it's easy. It has appeared easy for me to you because I planned. Okay. I'm not one of those who just, you know, emotionally booked a one way ticket and, you know, had to find my way on the other side. I'm one of those who planned. I'm one of those who frequented the locations I had to go to. I'm one of those people that tried to put things into place so that I wouldn't have the backlash on the other end. So, yes, for a lot of people, I haven't encountered a lot of drama. Like a lot of diasporans that have moved to Ghana have encountered so much drama. Why? Because they picked up on an emotional high and they moved, or they followed a lover to the motherland, or they followed their favorite YouTuber to the motherland, or whatever it is. That was never my situation. You're dealing with someone who frequented Ghana for 4 good years before she moved there. Okay. You're dealing with someone who is heavily associated with the Ghanaian community. You're dealing with someone who loves the motherland and what it has to offer. So, based on my situation is not like their situation because the circumstances regarding my move and my process is different, you know. So I want to say this because again, you know, I saw that comment and I thought to myself, well, you know, I mean, I don't know if that was some kind of like emotional response to my videos, because I do know people project when, especially, you know, if they're in a situation where maybe they want to move and everybody around them doesn't want to move, their spouse doesn't want to move, or they're in a situation, they're in debt, or whatever their case may be, and they can't go, they will project that bitterness out because they feel some type of way. You know, they feel like those of us on the other side, we're just having so much fun and they're left behind, you know. So I don't know if it was an emotional response, I don't know if it was a casual response, I don't know, but I just wanted to bring this video out to address that. You know, moving abroad is not it's not a fly by night thing. It's not an easy thing. It requires a lot of strategy, it requires a lot of infrastructure, it requires financing, and it requires tenacity, you know, because you're basically picking up at whatever age you are and you're starting over at square zero wherever you go. Okay. You got to learn the city. You got to learn the demographics. You got to learn the system. Sometimes you got to learn the language. You know, it might be a different climate, religious differences. I mean, there's so many things that can come into play. Like, I would say Ghana is like completely different from the UK. It's a completely different from America, you know? And that is could be a culture shock, and that's why I personally recommend, you know, what worked for me was frequenting the place. You know, what worked for me was learning all about it before I got there. You know what I'm saying? So that basically Ghana was an extension of familiarity for me. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I landed, like I know some people that has been their situation. They've landed in Africa and the culture shock has been huge because they literally knew nothing about it before they flew. They just bought a ticket. You know, for some countries that don't require the visas or whatever, you can get visas on arrival, like Egypt or Kenya or South Africa. People literally book tickets and go to Africa with no prior knowledge, apart from, you know, maybe what they think they know from TV or what they've heard or what a coworker said or whatever nonsense like this. Me and them are not in the same situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I actually got very comfortable in Ghana before I moved there. By the time I moved to Ghana in 2020, I had been at least half a dozen times. Big shout outs. Thank you so much for that, African Goddess. Big shout outs. African Goddess says it's all about the planning and understanding before you move to Africa. It's not for everyone. Yes. Thank you guys for the super chats. I'm so happy for the support today. I see this topic is popular. Big shout outs to you guys. Thank you for being there with me. Yes. Um, so by the time I came to Ghana, what I'm saying, I already had created a bit of familiarity. Now I recognize, some people say, well, Gina, I can't afford to be going back and forth, and I can't take off of work, and I can't do this and I can't do that. Listen, I can't advise people that are not serious about it like I'm serious about it. I had things too. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine moving to a country on your own. You don't speak the language. I met people during my travels, but at first I didn't know anybody living in Ghana. The Ghanaians I knew lived in Ohio, or some of them were in the UK. Those that I know now living in Ghana, I met them after my move. So, I had to also adapt. But I was willing to do that because it was something that I really wanted to do, you know? And so I don't want anybody to get the impression, you know, the reason you don't hear me coming here and singing the sob stories is mostly because of the infrastructure I put in. Some of the things that people have going on when they move to Ghana, such as issues with housing. Some of them are having a lot of drama with their landlords or their housing, or being able to adapt to the light out and the water shortages and the rough roads and all this stuff. Some of those things I've either never encountered because I've lived in the same place since I moved to Ghana, and a strategic location inside the city that I don't have frequent, power outages and frequent water outages, because in the neighborhood I'm living, they're not as, frequent as they would be in some other places and the outskirts and in other towns and those kind of things. You see, I made those preparations, and I know that it makes some people upset. I know it makes some people upset that I don't have the sob stories. I know they really want to see those of us that are venturing to the continent. They really want their stereotypes to come true. But in my case, moving to Ghana was my second move. I moved to the UK. I had to do a very similar plan. Only difference, one of the critical differences when I moved to the UK was I got a job. I've never worked in Ghana. So, that whole portion of the migrating, I've never done it. But I had a very similar game plan, save up my money, try to work on housing. I had the very unconventional way when I moved to the UK of renting an Airbnb for 4 months. And I ultimately ended up renting that Airbnb for about 3 years. I just, went to the landlord and I said, hey, look, would you consider renting this to me as an apartment instead of the Airbnb? And that's how I worked that out. Now I do recognize that finding housing in Ghana could be a lot more challenging. Me personally, I wouldn't recommend doing it entirely online. Like, I actually did my whole finding my Airbnb in the UK. I did everything online. However, I did have a friend that was in the UK that I kind of asked them about the area, the postcode, and what did they think about it. But, I was able to do everything pretty much for the UK online. In Ghana, I did some of it online, but I waited to confirm and do any money transactions until I was in Ghana on the ground. You know what I'm saying? So, but for me, again, I think if you have migrated, you have a concept of things to either watch out for, things to prepare for, and you may have some ideology of how to do it. Now, if you don't, if you're coming from block 10, if you're coming from block 10, then I'm going to recommend that you get active and frequent the country. And again, if you're someone that's like, I don't have money, then I would say, I don't know if you're ready to make a move, because I wouldn't really particularly recommend any foreigner to move abroad with like the hair on your chinny chin chin, because anything can happen. Okay, anything can happen when you're abroad and you're a foreigner in those lands, and you may not have family and friends and all that stuff. You definitely need to have some liquid money to be able, or someone to call to help you in those situations. You know what I mean? And I can't really say I'm surprised about the naivety of a lot of Westerners, specifically Americans, with the international community, because obviously we don't get a lot of resources of how to do these things. So in some cases, people are literally going to foreign countries completely oblivious of decorum and what to do and things like that. And in some cases it's even cost people their lives, because they mess up with political, they start talking politically. Some of them, it's been healthcare. I saw some episodes about these British kids that went to party in Thailand, and they went to some resort, and this resort was selling them basically like fake alcohol or manufactured alcohol, and they ended up killing a group of them. And it some of these things is the naivety. You are not in America when you move to Asia, when you move to Africa, when you move to Latin America. One of the best rules of thumb is observation. If you don't know something, just observe what's going on. Ask. If you see something happening and it seems a bit unusual, or you can't decipher what it means, or you don't understand the language, ask, find out what's going on around you. The oblivion from some of these people is unbelievable to me, and very, very dangerous. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I wanted to come and bring this here, guys. I don't know why it's not letting me see the comments, if there's any comments, but I want to say thank you to all my super chat donors today, guys. I really, really appreciate that. Because I haven't been consistently coming live, but I am trying to do a bit more going into the new year. I just had a chaotic second and third quarter. Let me not lie to you about it. Shout out to members only. I did update with a members only vlog. If you guys are interested in behind the scenes vlogs of what goes on and a little bit more insight as to my everyday life, then hit the join, the subscribe, and you can get access to members only. So I posted one up this week, kind of giving them an update. But I mean, quite frankly, the second and third quarters of this year have been chaotic. And with that chaos, my response to the chaos was putting all of my focus and energy to solving and working on the circumstances that were creating that chaos. And there really wasn't the desire for social media. I do recognize a lot of people here, when they're having chaos and drama, they love to run to social media and put everybody in the mix, but I'm a bit more private. I just wanted to solve the problems. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to turn a corner, and I'm really happy to say that is slowly but surely happening. I'm in position to equalize at the beginning of next year, which will give me a clean slate for the year. And I am preparing to really, really, come out there. Shout out to all the African superstar music lovers. You guys are going to get new music. I've already put my studio session, booked my new studio session to record about 10 new tracks. Hello, yes. So if you're not streaming the African superstar, go ahead and get us on your streams so that you won't miss out when the new music comes out. And obviously, if you're watching us here, you want to subscribe so that you don't miss my new music videos or anything like that. Yes. So just to wrap up, moving abroad is not easy. If I give that impression, woohoo to me, because it means my planning was on point. I do deal with stuff, relating to it. It is not easy. Also balancing life in virtually like 3 different countries, although I primarily go between the UK and Ghana, but I do sometimes go to the US, and that means managing situations in all three locations simultaneously. You know, sometimes a problem pops up in the UK and I have to go deal with it, or a problem pops up in the US and I have to go deal with it, or, you know, a problem in Ghana. You know, although out of the three, Ghana is the less stress. Ghana is the less stress. Ghana is like my source of happiness out of the three. You know what I'm saying? Like I get so much enjoyment and peace and rest and you know, it's I mean, hey, what can I say? Ghana's good for me, you know. But balancing three locations, keeping up with your travel documents, keeping up with your banking, keeping up with this and that, it's a lot. You know what I mean? In addition to dealing with the human response to not living the conventional lifestyle. You know, I get a lot of flack from people. I get a lot of unwanted advice and commentary. People telling me what they think I should do and how they feel about how I'm living my life. And I'm just like, look, you're living that one way. You don't hear me telling you what I think about your life. You know what I'm saying? Just do what you, if you're so happy and content in your way of life, just focus on that and don't tell me nothing. You know what I'm saying? Let me go ahead and live my path. You go ahead and live your path. You know, because I'm basically just trying to muster out um enjoyment out of my life. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know when the end is, and I don't want to squander time doing stuff I don't want to do and be in places I don't want to be. Simple. You know, so I'm vying for my freedom any way that I can. And I guess a lot of people don't understand that. But what I've come to know as an adult is it takes a lot of freedom to really pursue your freedom. Like, I mean, it takes a lot of um courage, basically, to pursue your freedom. A lot of people say they want it, but when they sit down and start looking at how to actually achieve it and what's going to be required and the cost involved, they get deterred and they just say, you know what, I don't like my current circumstances, but I'll just roll with it because it's more convenient. You know, those of us that really like prioritize our freedom and we pay the cost and we struggle and we figure it out. And sometimes we go back to block one and we, you know, those of us, I mean, we're the real MVP for real. Because I mean, I can't, especially since I have experienced it, I can't go back. You know what I'm saying? I can't go back. I can't go back. Since I've currently been in the UK, I had a friend ask me that I think a few weeks ago. And you know, she was just like, well, Gina, you know, I feel like you should just, you know, just come back here for some time and this and that. And I just can't bear it. You know what I mean? I just cannot bear it. Like because of the option of Ghana being there, it's always in the back of my mind. And I always choose that, you know, if I have to look at the big picture. So anyway, guys, I hope this video was helpful, you know, to that individual who left that comment. They will know this is for them. Again, I didn't mean to offend you. I know everybody has different circumstances, and you know, I have never projected or verbalized that moving abroad was easy. You know, I have simply said that if it's a priority to you, if it's important to you, where there's a will, there's a way. I know people that have moved with their families, including their mother. You know, my girlfriend Stacy from Something from the Holidays, when she and her three kids and husband and mother picked up and moved to Ghana. You know what I'm saying? Now, yeah, her husband is a Ghanaian, you know, a Ghanaian American. So obviously they have some in-laws and things like that on the continent. But there's countless examples of people that have picked up with their many children, extended family, and gone. It just means where there's a will, there's a way. That's all that it means. And it means finding the way to make it happen. Everybody's way may not be the same. You know, as a single person, yeah, I just really had to navigate myself. You know, now obviously my family, you know, they could have been stumbling blocks for me too. I could have said, well, I don't want to be away from my mom, or I don't want to be away from my sister, you know, kind of thing. Or I don't want to be away from my environment. You know, I'm settled here, I'm matriculated here. This is where I know. I still made a difficult decision. Even though I didn't have to incorporate kids or a spouse or anything like that, still made a difficult decision. So, I'm not trying to be funny with my videos and I don't want anybody to be offended, but at the end of the day, if you really want to, if Africa's on your mind, then go for it. If people aren't on board, if you have a spouse, if that's the situation where it's like, okay, you want to go and your spouse doesn't want to go, well, then maybe you guys can come to a consensus that, hey, look, I'm going to spend a few months in Africa and I can come back here for a few months, or let's do half the year there, half the year here, or, whatever. I know some people that are in bi-coastal marriages, they work it out, so I mean, there's ways. Aging parents, you know, either they can go in a home. If you don't want to go in a home, then bring them with you. If you can't bring them with you, then, I mean, hey, you have to look at it and try to figure out how it can be managed. If it is a priority for you, that's just the main thing. So anyway, guys, much love to the African superstar family. I think I'm having a technical difficulties. It's not letting me see the comments today, unfortunately. So I can't respond to what you guys have been leaving in there, but I'll try to get worked out for the next episode. Okay. Until we meet again, stay black and true. If you ain't black, just stay true.